Hello, welcome back to Hydroponics Daily with me, Dr. Russell Sharp. I mentioned in a previous episode that we've been trialling different growing media for growing spring onions because we wanted to get the growing media right before we started experimenting with what's the best fertilizer and what are the best additives to add for spring onion crops. And I started off just assuming that coco was the best substrate. And then my seeds didn't germinate well, and I thought, right, that's it. Coco is obviously not the best. So I decided to run a trial comparing coco to vermiculite, horticultural sand, perlite, and volcanic rock, and to see which is the best hydroponic substrate. And just got the results in this week. Came back after the bank holiday weekend, and really surprising is that it was actually coco that performed the best, which is really frustrating and set me back to step one again, back to the drawing board. But it wasn't all negative because the coco did really well. So I think it was the conditions in which it was in that was the issue. So I'll put the picture of the trial as the image art, the artwork for this episode. And if you're on Spotify, you'll be able to see it. I think on Apple, it doesn't really work for some reason, but they all germinated in the coco, and they even, I've been planting the seeds halfway down a very, very deep plug. And then for one side, and then the other side, I've been doing them at the bottom of the plug to see if I can get these really long spring onions with a really long bulb, as they call it, the white section at the bottom. But then the coco, they all germinated on both sides, even the deep one. The next best was vermiculite. Then the next best to that was sand, and then there was no germination in the volcanic rock or the perlite. Now, I think it's something to do with the water holding capacity, and this is one of the issues I want to talk about when it comes to grow media. I think the reason why a lot of people use coco is it's very forgiving of hand watering and watering every other day or every day. These plants were not watered, these seeds and seedlings were not watered every day because of the weekends and things like this. And just because we've got other stuff to do, we've got fertilizers to manufacture and things like this. So the vermiculite holds a lot of water and the coco holds a lot of water, and they seem to perform well. And I think it's because of that reason. Now, this horticultural sand was even though one or two germinated, it was a big disappointment. The grow media, the sand just flushed away. It just washed away really quickly, lost its integrity. All the others kept their integrity, but the horticultural sand didn't. So I thought that would be the best, and it was actually the worst. I will not be using that again. And it got algae on it really quickly because I think it's literally been dug up out of a quarry and broken into bits and left in a yard. So it already had a load of algae on it. So rubbish. And then the volcanic rock and the perlite, I've not given up entirely. Perlite I'm not so keen on because I've used it before and it didn't do well with wasabi. I think it gave off too much aluminium. But the volcanic rock I've still got high hopes for. And that's because I'm going to run it in either a ebb and flood system or a NFT system. I'm going to try again because I think that's where it'll come into its own. What I think was happening was the spring onion seeds were not, because the volcanic rock was not holding on to any moisture, there was nowhere for the seed and the seedling to germinate to access the water. It was only being watered once a day. So unless there only a few droplets that were left on it. So I think if you can get that system flushing with liquid, like a traditional hydroponic setup, a few times a day, that's where volcanic rock will come into its own. So normally you would think of rock wool to be an alternative hydroponic medium. It's the most common hydroponic medium for NFT, but I want this long bulb of the spring onions and I want the spring onions to grow through it. And because of the tight network in rock wool, that's just not going to be a goer. So I'm going to set up another system looking at NFT volcanic rock and compare that to vermiculite and peat and perlite as well. So we'll run that in our new NFT system that we're installing this week at Utrema HQ. And interesting that the sand, that's gone now. And we will be running more trials with the peat, so just hand watering once a day. Peat definitely seems to be the go-to grow media for hand watering from this trial. And we'll be running a number of spring onion trials in the in the cocoa. Did I say peat? I meant cocoa. The cocoa's the best. We will be running different additives now in cocoa. Now we've got the system set up where we can deep plant them, and we know how to germinate them and get those really long bulbs. We'll be running different systems with comparing gold leaf to 2-part fertilizers, or gold leaf, or liquid gold as it's called in the UK, with plus our organic silicon, comparing it with our liquid gypsum product to give it calcium and sulfur, our lime sulfur product to give it calcium and sulfur as well, because these are what provide the strong onion smell. The calcium and sulfur what give you a really good crunch and a strong taste in onions. So we're going to do some really interesting experiments around that next. Okay, so that's been a really good trial because it's sort of backed up the reason why people use cocoa in sort of hand watering hydroponic systems. But we're moving more towards NFT this year. So I think we're using rock wool for growing hops and our blackgrass plants, and then we'll be running various systems to find out what's the best for running spring onions. Thanks very much for listening to this episode. I'll be at GreenTech in Amsterdam coming in second week in June, I think it is. Have a check. If you are around at GreenTech, then it'd be great to meet up, and maybe if you wanted to do a duet on a podcast, you wanted to be interviewed on a podcast, or just give your thoughts on a podcast, that would be great to meet up, get a beer and talk through hydroponics. If you're thinking of going to GreenTech, it's a great show. I'm not paid by the people at GreenTech to say that. It is the best hydroponics show in Europe. It's not focused on any one sector. So it's not legal cannabis, it's not tomatoes, it's not ornamentals, it's everything. And it draws a global audience. It's in a great location. It's a great facility. It's a great time of year to be in Amsterdam rather than in the middle of winter, like a lot of conferences and trade shows are. You'll always learn something. There's always business to be done, and it's easy to get to as well. So if you are thinking of going to GreenTech, I highly advise it, and give me a shout when you're there and we can meet up and I can record you on my podcast. I've now got 2 microphones, so that won't be an issue. Okay, and hopefully I'll get loads of content for the Hydroponics Daily podcast while I'm there. I've got loads of lollipops as well with a Hydroponic Daily QR code on them. And I've got some beer mats as well, which I might leave in some pubs. So hopefully we'll get some more listeners from GreenTech. Okay, until tomorrow, that's been Hydroponics Daily for today. Just an update on our grown media trials and how they suit hydroponics. Thank you for listening.